21st, 2024 meeting of the City Finance Committee. May I get a roll call, please?
Yes, we'll start with Committee Member Harmon,
Here.
Mayor Rouse,
Here.
and Vice Chair Friedman.
Here. All right. Before we go into our items for the day, is there any general public comment for items not on today's agenda but under the purview of the Finance Committee? Not seeing in-house. Are there any online?
Vice Chair Friedman, no hands are raised.
All right. I will close general public comment and turn it over to Ms. Doubles for item 1, the loan to the Housing Authority.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Friedman and Committee Member Harmon and Mayor Rouse. Thank you for having me here today to present to you a proposal for a loan to our City Housing Authority for $5 million for the development of property located at 200 North La Cumbre Road, also known as Bella Vista. Next slide, please. On the screen, we have this staff's recommendation that Finance Committee recommend that Council A introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving a loan agreement with the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Barbara in the amount of $5 million for development of real property located at 200 North La Cumbre Road to be used for permanent affordable housing, to be secured by a deed of trust and a 90-year affordability control covenant imposed on real property, and authorizing the Community Development Director to execute such agreements subject to approval as to form by the City Attorney as necessary, and B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending Resolution Number 23-076, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2024, to approve an increase in fiscal year 2024 expenditure appropriations in the Affordable Housing Fund in the amount of $5 million, funded by the Affordable Housing Fund reserves to fund a loan agreement with the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Barbara for development of real property located at 200 North La Cumbre Road. The property is a 1.6 acre parcel that the Housing Authority acquired back in 2019. And it is a 4 single-story office building consisting of medical and dental offices built in 1966. It's located at the intersection of Via Lucero and La Cumbre Road. And the current leases on the offices is set to expire this month, May 2024, in order to redevelop the property into the intended use of affordable housing. The Housing Authority will own, manage, and operate the property, and the current buildings will be demolished, and 48 residential units, large residential units, of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments will be constructed. The communal spaces will be designed to foster a sense of community among the residents. Next slide, please. The units will house lower income families, which is a really needed use here in the city, particularly those with children and individuals with developmental or physical disabilities. And the household income will be restricted to 60% AMI and below. There will be an on-site manager, and it will include Section 8 vouchers for rental assistance. Here are some pictures. On the left-hand side is the property currently. And the right-hand side is the proposed drawings that the Housing Authority has of the property once it's developed. The Housing Authority was created as a political arm by the Santa Barbara City Council back in 1969. They've been a partner with us for over 50 years, and their mission is to create safe, affordable, and quality housing opportunities for families and individuals while promoting self-sufficiency and neighborhood revitalization. Next slide, please. So the Housing Authority is requesting $5 million in city funding for the project. They have actually used reserves to acquire the property of $5.5 million. And they are proposing to defer their developer fee of $693,905. This city loan would demonstrate the support of the city for the project, as well as enabling the Housing Authority to have a much more competitive application for the low-income housing tax credits. So the proposed loan terms is for $5 million out of our affordable housing fund. It'll be paid by residual receipts repayment, which is when the project actually has a positive cash flow, then payment would be calculated to come back for the city on an annual basis. And then and each year that would be reevaluated to make sure that the cash flow is positive in order to afford the payment. It'll be at a 30-year term, 3% interest, and the maturity date will be in 2054. Next slide, please. The project's financial summary, the sources are here on the screen. As you can see, a large amount is from low-income housing tax credit at $31,396,365. The Housing Authority will have to get a permanent loan as well, $15,609,730. It also lists the deferred developer fee that we discussed and our proposed loan for a total of $52,700,000. And that is an estimation of what they see as being needed for this project. The uses, the land costs have been paid for by the Housing Authority reserves at $5.5 million. Direct construction costs are estimated at $40 million, with soft costs of $5 million, and then the full developer fee would be $2.2 million. A new city 90-year covenant would be placed and recorded on the property. This will restrict the property to lower income households at 60% AMI and below. The total cost per unit as a new build is, as you can see, a little over 1 million, almost 1.1 at 1,097,917. That's substantially more than what we've had in the past, but construction costs are definitely going up. However, the city cost per unit actually will only be $104,167. So that is only 9.5% of the whole new build cost. This is an extremely rare opportunity, and it's a great opportunity for the city to add bigger units to the affordable housing portfolio. Next slide, please. This will reduce our affordable housing fund reserves from approximately $9.5 million currently to about $4.5 million. And it will reduce the interest income in the affordable housing fund currently. It will be offset eventually by the future loan repayments. Next slide, please. And this is in alignment with the city's general plan goals for the city's general plan 2023 through 2031. Goal number 2 was to prioritize affordable housing policy 2.1, which states encourage and provide development opportunities and incentives to increase production of affordable housing. And goal 3, provide housing assistance policy 3.4, which states support rental assistance and emergency rent relief to lower income households, including those with extremely low incomes, and encourage landlords and property managers to participate in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. Next slide, please. So in summary, this adds 47 larger affordable units to accommodate the families, larger families, and to our city's affordable housing portfolio. And it continues our partnership with the Housing Authority, a very highly successful and established local agency. And it really helps us to the underserved population of low-income families, particularly those with children and individuals with developmental or physical disabilities, secure housing, which is really needed here in the city. Next slide, please. And now we're back to the staff's recommendation slides again. I'd like to also make sure that you guys know that Mr. Rob Fredericks, our Executive Director from the Housing Authority, is here, as well as Tracy Taylor, who is the Housing Finance Analyst for the Housing Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doubles, for the presentation. Are there any questions on the item? No questions. Ross?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Douglas? Yeah.
Chair Friedman, can we take a short recess? at
Sure,
this
we'll
juncture?
take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you, thank you.
Welcome back. So questions, Member Rouse?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Friedman. Ms. Double, so obviously there was a bit of an eyebrow raiser when we saw the $1 million per unit. And I remember when we just recently did the hotel project, we were talking about how it's great. It's about a third of what we normally would spend, which is about, average has been about 750,000 units. So is this strictly a product of the bad bidding atmosphere that we're in today? Is this why it is where it is at $1 million per?
Thank you, Vice Chair Friedman and Mayor Rouse. Actually, the hotel projects that we just brought forward not too long ago that you mentioned, that is already developed, so it's buying or acquiring already built units versus these are new built costs now.
I understand
Oh,
that,
okay.
but I mean, we were talking about the industry standard was costs about 750,000 units to put up what they've, I've certainly been going through in other communities as well. So
Correct.
that's why my eyebrows raised at this, 25% premium over that.
Right, right, yes. That is very true. That was our Veracruz Plaza, which was our last new built development. It was approximately 700,000, like you said. Yeah, the cost of construction has really gone up, as well as materials costs too.
Okay, I just wanted to know in case there was some special circumstance about this particular project that was making it so more expensive.
Not that I know of, but I know, yeah, I was just going to say.
Mr. Fredericks, if you'd like to help out here?
Looks like you would.
Thank you. Just wanted to add to what Ms. Doubles already noted is the high construction costs. That's going on all over California. In fact, I know that the over $1 million cost per unit is very eye-watering. It's like, it happens to me too when I see it. I'm like, whoa. That's the pricing we're seeing at for tax credit developments all over. One thing that's different for this project than Veracruz Village is they're large family units. So you have more bathrooms per unit than you do on a studio unit, and that adds to the costs all over. The plumbing, the electrical, all of it. It's additive, and also this site. I don't think we showed the site plan, but it's a really odd shaped lot, and we're trying to build it as efficiently as possible, creating enough parking for the families so they can get around. So we're doing podium parking with building on top of the podium with the grade changes. There's a lot of grading work required to make that podium parking a reality. So that plus what Ms. Doubles mentioned is what's causing these prices.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to determine whether there's special circumstances. I know this report is going to raise some eyebrows out there with our media friends, so
Right.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. No further questions. I don't have any. So is there any public comment to this item in chambers? Not seeing any. Are there any public comments online?
Vice Chair Friedman, there are no hands raised.
All right, so with that, it is back to us. Is there comments and a motion? Member Harmon.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. Excuse me. I love this project. I say this every time. I love when I see Ms. Doubles because it usually means we get to do something so positive, and it holds true today as well. I remember seeing this at a Housing Authority Commission meeting a couple years, must have been 2020, something. And just to be at this point is really wonderful. And I wanted to point out two things. First, the design is going to be a huge improvement. I really think it was so thoughtfully and wonderfully done, and I'm really looking forward to the improvements on that corner. I think it's going to be really wonderful. And then, as was pointed out multiple times in the staff presentation, I so value that these are larger units and specifically targeting families and individuals with special needs. It's so needed in this community and so difficult to find an affordable, frankly, anything at all, but certainly a 3-bedroom. And I'm very, very excited about this, and I would be proud to move staff recommendation.
The motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. I will just also concur with my colleagues' comments, and especially the point about having 2- and 3-bedroom units. We have to have a variety of units, not just studios and micro units in town. So this is an ability, and especially in that neighborhood where there's a couple of elementary schools, so a lot of those individuals will have families and be able to attend those schools. So with that, may I get a roll call, please?
Yes,
Or not a roll
motion.
call. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Hearing none, passes unanimously. And now we need to take a quick recess, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We are going to do a roll call. We've had a member change, so can we have a new roll call, please?
Yes, no problem. We'll start with Committee Member Harmon. Vice Chair Friedman.
Here.
Chair Gutierrez.
Here.
Great, thank you. And we are on to item 2, the third quarter review. Mr. DiMartini.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, members of the Finance Committee. My name is Keith DiMartini. I'm the city's finance director, and I'm here with Ms. Natalie Licoli, the city's controller, and it is our pleasure to present an overview of the third quarter financial review for fiscal year 2024. The objective of today's presentation is here on this slide, is for the committee to receive a report from staff on the status of revenues and expenditures in relation to the budget for 9 months ending March 31st, 2024. Recommend accepting the fiscal year 2024 interim financial statements for the 9 months ended March 31st, 2024. Approve of the proposed third quarter adjustments to fiscal year 2024 revenue and expenditure appropriations as detailed in the attached schedule of proposed adjustments. And then finally, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending the position salary control resolution 23-081 for the authorized positions for fiscal year 2024. The Human Resources Department requests council approval for the following adjustments, including the following position changes and the corresponding salary document updates. So the agenda for today's presentation is to first talk about the general fund. We'll give a brief overview of revenues and expenditures, and then we'll give a brief overview of the status for the enterprise funds, the 8 enterprise funds, and then we'll talk about the proposed budget adjustments. And again, the detailed list of all of the staff recommended adjustments are included as an attachment to the staff report. We will give a high-level overview. And then we'll also talk about a handful of position changes that staff are requesting at this time, and then of course take questions, public comment, and discussion. So this is our third quarter review. And so every month, the City Council receives a monthly financial statement update that goes on consent at every City Council meeting for the month following. Every quarter, we come to the Finance Committee and we give a little bit more of a detailed overview of staff's projections of where we think we will end up at the end of each fiscal year. Quarter one is a very preliminary, given only 3 months of actual data. Quarter two is our most robust quarter as it relates to having 6 months worth of data. It then is right in line with the timing of when we release the recommended budget for the next fiscal year as well. Quarter three is simply an update to kind of where we're projecting at the end of Q2. So it's not as robust as Q2. We will plan to come back to you in September for the quarter four update. And then hopefully we will produce our financial statements for the year ending and present to you in December. So first, let's talk about the general fund. This slide here summarizes the total of the general fund revenues that we are projecting, and then the total of expenditures with a projected deficit for fiscal year 2024 of approximately $3.6 million. So you can see on this table what our adopted budget was for general fund revenues and expenditures. You can see that we have a revised budget column as well. And it's important to note that during City Council meetings, during these quarterly updates, we will work with the City Council to revise the budget based on changes that Council is approving to make during the year. It also includes these encumbrance carry forwards for prior year commitments that we have already made in a prior year budget to carry those appropriations forward to go ahead and spend that money, which you can see itemized here on this table as well. This table here on the next slide summarizes where we are with Measure C. So during last year's budget cycle, the committee members may recall that we went ahead and budgeted the use of available cash that was in the fund that had accumulated over the past couple of years as the economy rebounded very strongly post-COVID. And so we get approximately $31 million of annual revenue from the Measure C district sales tax. We went ahead and appropriated all of that and also the cash that was sitting in the fund at the time we produced the budget. And so that's why the expenditure budget of $46 million is higher than the annual amount of revenue of $31 million. And we are planning to either spend or have that money be appropriated. And much of it may carry forward, will likely carry forward into next fiscal year because this money goes towards capital projects, and capital projects will oftentimes take longer than 1 year to spend down all of their funds. I already talked about the carry forwards. I will just mention on this slide that we have had a trend over the past couple of years of the number of projects and the total dollar value of the carry forwards that have been required has gone up pretty substantially over the past couple of years. And that really is attributable to projects taking longer, right? We have had a high vacancy rate over the past couple of years. albeit our vacancy rate has come down fairly recently, which is good, but we have sort of this backlog of projects. It's also challenging to get some construction contracts under contract, and so there are a number of factors that play into that. We've also received a lot of one-time money from the American Rescue Plan Act legislation that was passed, and so that one-time money will be spent over a number of years, and so that's also leading to the amount of carry forwards being higher than sort of our more typical. And so I just want the committee members to be aware of that. This slide here summarizes our taxes in the general fund. It itemizes every tax that we receive, and it shows what the revised budget is for each of those taxes in the current year, and then it will compare to how much tax revenue has come in thus far through the end of quarter 3. And then staff projects where we think we'll end by the end of the fiscal year with just 3 months remaining. And it's important to note that our projection is pretty much right at where our revised budget is at. $149.6 million versus $149.1. So there's a little bit of variation among some of the taxes. You'll see that our property tax is a little bit higher at 48 million versus 46, which is great. But you can see that our taxes and pretty much all of the other ones are slightly lower, for most of them below what the budget was, indicating a softening of our tax revenues compared to original projections, and we went ahead and used this additional information for our fiscal year 25 tax projections for our revenues as well. And this graph here just takes the information I presented on that prior slide in a graphical format showing the revised budget for each of these taxes, and then the lower blue line showing how much has come in to date, and that upper blue section is how much we are projecting to come in for the remainder of the fiscal year. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. LaCauley.
Thank you, Mr. DiMartini. Chair Gutierrez, Vice Chair Friedman, and Committee Member Harmon. I'm going to discuss now the short-term rental enforcement program. This program was actually established in August of 2023, and it's following a successful path with, at the end of quite a free 40 settlement that's been closed, bringing to the general fund $450,000 and to the Mesure B $90,000. Then we can now discuss the general fund expenditure. The general government is at 65% of budget, slightly lower than projected. The city attorney fund is actually much lower than anticipated, and it's mainly due to 2 vacant positions, the city attorney assistant 1 and 2, that were vacant for most of the year. Now those positions have been filled. However, there is now a new position, city attorney assistant number 4, that is available. So ultimately, this fund will end the year lower than the project, the revised budget. And public safety is at 69% of its budget. Police is still lower than projected, and it's mainly due to still vacant positions that we have. Then we move into community services. It's at 66% of its budget. Projection will be lower by slightly under 1 million. Sustainability and resiliency, I would like to point out to that line item, it's only at 17% of its budget. And it is actually mainly due to special projects related to the environmental remediation. Most of the available fund, about $436,000, will be carried forward to fiscal year 25 unless there is a regulatory approval that are actually finalized before the end of this year. Below, on the non-departmental, I would like to discuss a little bit more that line item. The non-departmental account primary consist on transfer out to other fund and transfer out to reserve for capital improvement project. Within the revised budget, there is a reduction of about $6 million that represent the targeted saving for general fund. At the end of Q3, this saving was reduced to 1.7 million. The main cause for this change relate to the reappropriation of funds from the general fund to the local housing trust fund for 2.9 million. This transaction was approved by council back in January of this year. As a final result for general fund expenditure, the city stands at about 72% of its budget, which is within the expected norm, which usually would be about 75%. So in this slide, it's actually just a representation of the information that we just discussed in the last two slides in the form of a bar graph, presenting to the left the data that show the revised budget. And to your right, you would have the actual with the upper portion, which is your projection for Q4. We will now discuss the enterprise fund. So I will start by the solid waste fund. It projects to add about 1.5 million to its reserve versus finishing the year by using 2.4 million of its reserve. The main variance relate to an original 1.7 million cost to close out the Marble contract. This cost was accounted for in fiscal year 23 after budget 24 was adopted. Consequently, it is an overstatement on the budget side. Salary and benefits are below budget due to vacancy and contribute as well to the reduction of the expenses. Then we have the clean energy fund. So the clean energy fund accounts for the cost to procure clean and renewable electric energy on behalf of the Santa Barbara community. The latest pro forma indicate a strong forecast for this revenue, or about 5.6 million over budget, when expenditure will be lower due to vacancy. The final result is projected to add 13.9 million to the reserve, a strong growth in comparison to fiscal year 23. Water fund. Water fund should have a significant turnaround, mainly due to a 1.5 million saving in the electrical and chemical supplies, and it's due to the desalt plant that was offline for about 2 months due to maintenance. Let's remember that actually that 2 month shut off to be offline will be not applicable for fiscal year 25. So this kind of saving will not incur for the following year. Another 2.1 saving is directly related to the billing costs for water supply associated with various agreements, such as Central Coast Water Authority. This cost was initially forecasted to be higher based on past experience with weather condition. And then the last one would be the wastewater fund that project to finish the year at a neutral position with a slight decrease in its expense due to vacancy. On the next slide, we have the airport, waterfront, and golf funds. Those project to end the year at or close to revised budget. And ultimately, the downtown parking anticipate to use 1.8 million to its reserve, and it's mainly due to the difficulty to generate revenues. So I'm going to now discuss a few of the proposed budget adjustment, and the first slide is for the general fund. For the fire department, the additional overtime request is required to address minimum staffing and overtime expenses through the end of this fiscal year. In total, the general fund operating expense budget has adequate capacity to cover those requests. The next one for Measure C, it is a technical budget adjustment to align Measure C the revenue and expenditure budget. So this is no new request. There's no new request on that line. The next one will probably need a little bit more of an explanation. It's the appropriation for UAL to OPEB. So first, the UAL. The UAL stands for Unfunded Accrued Liability, and it's an account that holds short and long-term pension expenses. This line item was budgeted based on our actuary report billing amount that was listed at gross. We paid up front the lump sum in order to take advantage of the cash discount. Consequently, this line item was overstated. So we took this excess and we transferred it to the OPEB, that stands for Other Post-Employment Benefit, that is strictly for retirees. This action was taken upon our auditor recommendation, as we needed to demonstrate we were keeping at or decreasing the liability we currently have on our book. So an adjustment of 1.6 million took place. Then can I have the next? Thank you. And then the other funds listed there, it's just going to leave you a few minutes just to read through them, but I will not discuss further. And at this time, I will let Mr. DiMartini to finish the presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Licoli. So as we've been doing for the past couple of quarters now, instead of individual position changes going to council on a separate council agenda report, staff has packaged them into this quarterly process. And so these are the ones that are ready to go at this point in time. I won't go through each one of these individually, but you can see there are a number of sort of minor position changes that staff are recommending, a couple of reclassifications from one position type to another to better align the scope of work of those employees with what the work they should be doing. You can see there are a couple additional position requests fully funded by those departments as well, and a couple of hourly positions as well. It's also important to note that the attachments to the staff report include the required salary schedule and other human resource documentation to ensure that those positions are categorized correctly. So here we are back to staff's recommendations, and that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Licoli. Mr. DiMartini, any questions? Member Harmon.
Thank you, Vice Chair Friedman. Just one, on slide 9, first of all, I love how close your projection was. That's very, very impressive. I'm surprised to see that the property transfer tax is so much lower than we anticipated. I assume that's just a function of the broader housing market, but can you discuss that a little bit, and also the relationship between that transfer tax and the property tax that we receive? Because I think from a total layperson's perspective, I would anticipate that if the property transfer tax was so much lower, the property tax would also at least stay the same or be lower. I'm surprised that that's increased while the transfer has decreased. So if you could just discuss those, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. Member Harmon, thank you so much for that question. So first, with real property transfer tax, that is a tax on the transaction. So when a property transfers ownership from one owner to another, this is a tax that applies for the transfer. And so when there aren't a lot of properties on the market or a lot of properties selling or transferring ownership, this tax doesn't perform very well. And so what we're seeing here is kind of in line with what's going on in the real estate market. There aren't a lot of transactions, right? But our property tax, however, continues to be very strong, and that's because every year, based on state legislation, the property tax assessed value can go up by 2%, which is sort of the CPI assumption. But then we also see more than that, because every time a property does change ownership, the value of the property does get reassessed to current market level. And so that's why our property tax the property tax revenue goes up more than the 2%, and it stays strong.
So that gets exactly to my question. I'm surprised to see 8.6 increase. So the 2% is statutory, and so let's say 6.6% is a result of the transfers. Mm-hmm. So is the property value going up that much? Because it only gets reassessed on transfer, right? And if the transfer tax is so much lower, I don't know. I guess that just says a lot for those of us that want to become homeowners
Councilmember Harmon,
in Santa Barbara.
it is. Yeah, it's what the real property transfer tax. The tax itself is very small. It's not very large, and it is truly based on the number of transactions. And so, if it's half as many transactions, that's why that amount is so much lower. I don't know how many it actually is, but that's how it works.
So the assessment on the property tax only happens at transfer, right?
That is correct. Yeah, or if a property has a substantial amount of like redevelopment or, yeah, then it might get assessed as well.
Questions? Stay on, I have just two questions. So on this slide, slide 9, the transfer, transient occupancy tax, it's a little bit less than last year, basically spot on. But on slide 11, you noted that there's a 450,000 general fund from the short-term enforcement. So is that included in this figure on slide 9, the 450,000? So without it, would the TOT be underperforming? even more?
Vice Chair Friedman, that is correct. And so the $450,000 that we've collected through the short-term rental enforcement program, that is included in this slide, in the sales, in that TOT slide, the fourth line, in the projected full year. We did not budget for it because it was really hard to know how much TOT would come in at the time we produced the budget. And so it is reflected in our actuals and our projection.
Okay, thank you. And then if you could go to slide 6, my last question. So the projected deficit is 3.6 million. How does downtown parking situation play into that, especially with the recent action or inaction that council took, depending on how you want to phrase it? Does that affect? Will that affect this number, or have you had a chance to incorporate it into that number?
Vice Chair Friedman, thank you for that question. So at this time, for fiscal year 24 only, for our current fiscal year, this deficit is being projected without any additional need to transfer funds from the general fund into downtown parking. There are adequate reserves in the downtown parking fund to cover their projected deficit at this time. Going forward, that we'll talk in more detail this afternoon, that situation changes because their projected reserves, if the council's recommendations were to be implemented in full, they would deplete all of their reserves. So we would be in a different situation next year, which we'll talk about in more detail this afternoon.
Thank you. With that, I'll open up to public comment. Any members of the public wish to speak? Not seeing any in the chambers. Are there any online?
Vice Chair Friedman, no hands are raised.
All right, so we're going to bring it back to my colleagues. So for this, I need to separate out item C because I will need to recuse myself for item C. So I'll open up for comments, and then if we could take a motion for A, B, and D, and then when we get to item C, I'll state the recusal, and then I will step out for that one. So any comments? Member Harmon.
Thank you, Vice Chair Friedman. Just continue to appreciate the careful attention and care that you guys pay to our budget and your careful stewardship and your willingness to educate us. I very much appreciate it. So with that, I am happy to move objective A, B, or staff recommendation A, B, and D.
I'll second.
There's a second. And I too want to thank all of our staff. It's, I want to say those numbers are almost like accounting jujitsu because you got them so close to each other. But really appreciate the work that went into this. And so for items A, B, and D, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Not hearing any. So for item C, I do need to recuse myself on the recommendation of the city attorney, and this relates to I am a minor shareholder in Disney, and this affects the Disney expenditures that in that lawsuit. So I will be recusing myself based on that, on the advice of the city attorney. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to the chair for the vote. Thank you.
So do we have a motion to move staff recommendation C?
Sure, Madam Chair. I will move recommendation C.
I second. Roll call?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you. And I think that's it.
Concludes the meeting, Chair
Thank you.
Gutierrez. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.